Hello. Wow, it works. Cool. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm excited to see that the weather didn't scare anybody off. I'm also excited that our content and event operations team didn't schedule this event for tomorrow because the Mets have a day game, and David Levine, Bloomberg's general counsel, and I may have had to skip this event for it, especially with the way they're playing. So I'm Scott Mozarsky. I head up the cross-platform businesses across the Bloomberg industry verticals. Those are Bloomberg B&A, Bloomberg Government, and Bloomberg New Energy Finance. It's my pleasure today to welcome you to our event focused on diversity and inclusion in the legal market. I want to thank all of you for coming. I also want to thank our speakers. We really appreciate your participation, and this event, obviously, well, with no speakers, we couldn't have an event, but it wouldn't be, our content team has assembled a great lineup of speakers today. I want to give a special thank you to our partners in this event, Paul Hastings, MGNM Law, as well as the Minority Corporate Counsel Association and the New York City Bar. We really appreciate everything you've done to work with us here. You've been great partners, and we really appreciate your support. So when we started Big Law Business, the website, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, our goal was that the site and the related events would provide a forum through which we could help large law firms and their clients and the legal market generally deal with opportunities and with challenges that were occurring as a result of significant disruption. One of the issues we flagged on day one as an important issue was the issue of diversity. A lot of talk, but not much action. And our hope was that by having events like this, by covering the subject on the site, whether it be Casey Sullivan, whether it be contributors, we could not only stimulate an important dialogue, but hopefully spur some action. So I'm hoping that today, which is the first in a series of events we're doing focused on diversity, actually it's the third in a series of events we're doing on diversity, but the first this year will be a step in the right direction. Last thing I'd say before I hand this off to David Levine is that our session today, the workshop session, is going to be done on background. That means to the extent there are journalists here or bloggers or anybody else who's going to write about the event, they can't use your name or your title. So feel free to be to vigorously debate things and participate, and you're protected. So anyway, with that said, David.
Good afternoon. So if the weather hasn't scared you off, my job is to do that. So thanks for being here this afternoon. Last week there was a fairly well-publicized blog post from a former Big Law senior associate who resigned her position and offered the following all too familiar story. As a lawyer, I was working sometimes 300 hours in a month and missing my kids all the time. I felt guilty for spending any time not firm-related. I never had a vacation where I did not work. I missed my dear grandmother's funeral. I made the final decision that this could not last. There must be a better way, so I resigned. This individual seems to have left the practice of law altogether. This is one of the many reasons we are here today attending an event on diversity in the legal profession, which is titled A Call for Action. We have a lot of work to do. Over the past decade, our country has become increasingly diverse. However, our profession, despite the proliferation of diversity efforts, is, for the most part, no more diverse than it was a decade ago, especially when looking at the ranks of big law firms. Other professions have done a lot better. We will make and hear many excuses, typically starting with the lack of pipeline coming from law school, which firms will argue is beyond their control. In the case of women, that argument simply doesn't fly. The pipeline is there. In the case of minorities, unfortunately, it is effectively the pipeline argument, an excuse not to look at other factors within these firms' control or to invest in truly long-term solutions. The pipeline argument fails to take into account the disproportionate rates of attrition from law firms and the field of law generally among women and minorities. For over 15 years, 50% or more of law school graduates have been women. As of 2012, 97% of law firms had rolled out women's initiatives to better retain and better train women for advancement. Yet, over the past decade, firms have made no appreciable progress in the rate at which they are promoting women into the role of equity partner. Yes, more women are being offered permanent positions than were before, but not equity, and pay for women continues to lag. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, law is one of the least racially diverse professions in the nation. 88% of lawyers are white. Compare that with the medical field, where 72% of physicians and surgeons are white. Black, Latino, Asian, and Native Americans now constitute about a third of the population in this country and a fifth of law school graduates. However, they make up fewer than 7% of law firm partners. After making the pipeline argument, firms will next say that many women and minority colleagues opt out of partnership because before they can be seriously considered. It is a fact that members of these groups on average leave sooner, but we need to look deeper as to why that's the case. The situation has gotten worse as the partnership track lengthens at most major law firms. We are now realistically looking at 10+ grueling years with no compromise for most people between the mid-20s and mid-30s, all for a possibility at maybe being promoted to equity partner. And the situation is even worse at those firms that have two-tier tracks, which are now increasingly 12 to 15 years. But as you get to years 4, 5, and 6, you don't know whether those major sacrifices will be rewarded. That has to change. Firms need to do more to keep women and minority colleagues engaged, and not just for permanent staff attorney, counsel, or non-equity partnership positions. There are clear short-term benefits for firm or company-driven D&I initiatives in the legal sector. A firm or company might increase its diversity among minority groups through retention and hiring, but it is likely that new colleagues will be joining from another firm or company that similarly craves diverse talent. Where we are now is a state of low supply and high demand. We need more supply. To achieve real and lasting success, we need collaborative, progressive leadership more than individual D&I programs, which are still important. We need more underrepresented groups to consider the practice of law. Yes, members of these groups need to believe that they will be given a fair chance, but they also need to believe that the profession is both worthwhile in terms of how it is perceived and attainable in terms of cost and time commitment. There are visible efforts to encourage women and minorities to choose careers in math and science, for example. We, as a profession, need more creative thinking about how to make our profession more attractive, and we also need to challenge long-standing rules and traditions. I fear that without real collective and progressive efforts to address the pipeline issue, we will be discussing similarly depressing statistics in a decade from now, which is why today's event is appropriately titled A Call to Action. It is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Paulette Brown. Paulette is a partner and co-chair of the firm-wide Diversity and Inclusion Committee at Locklord LLP and president of the American Bar Association. She served in a variety of leadership positions within the ABA, including chairing the ABA Council on Racial and Ethnic Justice. Paulette has held many positions throughout her career, including as in-house counsel to a number of Fortune 500 companies and as a municipal court judge. She's been recognized by the National Law Journal as one of the 50 most influential minority lawyers in America. A warm welcome for Paulette Brown.